I'm here today at Umami Tienda de Alimentos for Organics, and I am going to go in to see what they have to offer because I hear they have bulk items, which I absolutely love. That's a great way to save money and find really unique things. So let's go. I love these with the soap made on to the loofah. That is so cool. These are natural combs and brush. This so soft. These are handmade. Soaps. Oh, it smells so. Oh, these are beautiful. Oh, look at this blossom. That's absolutely gorgeous. This one. Oh, it's loaded with oranges. You see those way up there? Some there. So I'm done shopping. I got everything I need, and I got some kombucha. This is, I think she said ginger, honey, and lemon. So I can't wait to try this out. So I have everything I need. I got my peanuts, I have my jasmine rice, I have my chilies, and everything I need to make today's recipe. So let's go back home and get into this kitchen. Here I've already measured 1 cup of jasmine rice. So the ratio is going to be 1 cup of jasmine rice to 1 1/4 cup of water. I like to wash my rice. That's me. Some people don't. I like to make sure there's no residue, there are no rocks. I just want to make sure my rice is clean and that I'm starting from a clean slate. So here I am just rinsing the rice for the final time. I'm going to take it and just make sure all the water drains off. And I'm going to give it one final rinsing, and then I'm going to start the cooking process. Okay, now I'm just adding water to the rice. As I mentioned before, the ratio for jasmine rice is 1 cup of rice to 1 1/4 cup of water. Now you can certainly make this in your rice cooker, but you know what? Every now and then I like to cook it on the stovetop. To prepare your rice, you're going to bring it to a rolling boil. Yes, a rolling boil. We have to do that in the beginning, and then turn it down, low, simmer, and put a cover on it. Okay, so now the rice is done. The cook time for rice is normally about 12 minutes. While it's simmering, make sure you do not take that lid off for any reason, because you're going to allow the steam to escape and you're going to wind up with rice that is inedible. It has to steam. Okay, so now you just take your fork and fluff it. For this part of the recipe, we're going to cut a whole head of cauliflower. So you can either take your knife or your strong hands and remove the stalk. Now you want to make sure you're not dicing the cauliflower, but leaving the florets intact. Now this will create, kind of preserve the integrity of the floret so that the finished product is nice and roasted, but it can allow the sauce that we're going to make to adhere to the florets. So you don't want to cut it too small. Make sure you keep the florets intact. So now we're going to double check and just make sure all the florets are nice bite-sized pieces. Just check thoroughly, it'll be fine. Each serving is going to be different. Each floret is going to be different. So we just don't want to make sure they're too small. Now we want to make sure we cover all of the cauliflower with coconut oil. Yes, coconut oil. I know it looks like olive oil, but remember that shop that I went to, you have to bring your own containers because it is a bulk food store. So I brought my empty olive oil container and she put coconut oil in it. So here I'm going to add cracked pepper and just a pinch of salt to help the roasting process and to give it some flavor. Now I'm going to make sure that it is totally covered before I put it into the air fryer. I love these air fryer sheets. Cleanup is a cinch. So I like using them, and I'm going to transfer the cauliflower florets into one of the sheets and then place it into the air fryer. So while that's roasting at 400 degrees, roasting, not air frying. We want to make sure we use the roasting feature. We're going to allow that to roast for 8 to 10 minutes. Here, I'm taking 2 cloves of fresh garlic. And even though there's convenience garlic, like in the jar, or you can use garlic powder, I still prefer fresh. And just take 2 cloves and use your grater and grate them. Use your fine grate to grate them. I guarantee it'll turn out so much better when you're mixing this into the sauce. Now we're going to make sure that we collect all of the minced garlic, and we're just going to put that onto the side with the other ingredients. In the same fashion, we're going to do the same thing to our grated ginger. Now you don't have to take the skin off because as you grate, it's going to separate the stringy parts of the ginger from the skins, and then on the underside, it's going to collect all of the fresh ginger. So when I say 2 teaspoons, it's about 1 thumb of ginger. So that's about 2 inches. Use that as a measurement. 1 thumb is about 2 inches of ginger. So now that you have your 2 teaspoons of fresh ginger, you're just going to scrape the underside of the grater. You're going to collect everything as you did the garlic and place everything on the plate with the other ingredients. All right, let's make our sauce. We're going to start off with 2 to 3 tablespoons of low sodium soy sauce. Or if you have gluten allergies, you can always use 2 to 3 tablespoons of the gluten-free tamari, which I actually like. Now we're going to sweeten it a little bit with 4 tablespoons of hoisin sauce. This recipe actually called for rice vinegar, which you certainly can use, but I love apple cider vinegar. It's just my go-to vinegar, and that's what I'm using, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. I also picked up sesame seed oil from the little shop we went to earlier, and to the recipe, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of that. I'm also going to sweeten it up just a little bit. I know there's a little bit of sweetness in the hoisin sauce, but this will give that sticky, sweet effect. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of honey. Now, if you don't want to use honey, you can always use agave nectar or some type of liquid sweetener. I would not recommend liquid stevia because you need some sticking power, something that's going to adhere to the cauliflower. Now that we've measured all of the ingredients, we're going to give it a nice stir just to make sure everything is well combined. And we'll just put that to the side. So now we're going to make a little slurry with cornstarch. The cornstarch is 2 tablespoons, and then we're just going to mix a little bit of that sauce to make a slurry. We do this because we want to add the liquid and the thickener. So just a little bit at a time, just to make sure there are no lumps. You want to start small. You want to add your liquid to the cornstarch in the beginning before you add it to the finished product. You just want to make sure there are no lumps in the final product. Okay, so now we're going to whisk it together slowly, as I mentioned, and then we're going to add a little more of the sauce liquid with the slurry. Just adding it a little at a time, just to make sure that it's homogeneous, so that when you add it to the cauliflower, all of the ingredients will be well combined, and then they'll well coat and adhere to the cauliflower. So now the ingredients that I measured previously, the ginger, the garlic, and I'm even going to add a little bit of the pepper. I'm going to reserve the salt because there is some salt on the plate, but I'm going to add that later. I don't like to over salt food, so if I need salt at the end, I can always add it. But I want to make sure I start low and slow, adding what I need, and as far as salt, only adjusting as needed toward the end. Okay, let's check on our cauliflower. All right, the cauliflower should be ready. Let's check on it. So after 8 minutes, it's not overly roasted. You see a few brown roasted spots, but you don't want it fully cooked because we're going to have to put it in the air fryer again. The next step is removing it from the air fryer and just placing all of the cooked cauliflower into the bowl. Now it's time to add the sauce. Yes, so we're going to make sure that all the florets are covered, because when we put it back into the air fryer, we want to make sure that all of the florets are nicely coated, the sauce can adhere to the florets, and it's evenly cooked. So just give it a nice toss 2 or 3 times, and then we're going to place it into the air fryer. Now I'm using that same sheet that I used before, waste not, want not, because I just used it to roast it the first time, so I can use it for the second round. And I'm going to place it right back into the air fryer for about another 10 to 12 minutes, checking it after 12 minutes. Now here you can add your hot peppers if you want. These are the chilies. They are bold, and I found them at the little shop that I went to. I love that shop. I found just about everything I needed to make this recipe. But if you don't want to use that, you can always use crushed red pepper and put it into the sauce. And then you can take out the chilies are bold. Okay, so let's get our air fryer going again. We're going to place it at about 400 degrees Fahrenheit, 220, around 220 degrees Celsius for about 10 to 12 minutes, checking it after 10 minutes. Okay, so while the cauliflower is roasting, we're gonna just prepare our garnish. I'm gonna chop up a little bit of green spring onions, just thinly slice them as a garnish. You don't have to add this, only if you want to, but I love a nice green color. And just, you know, the green onions, typically, they complement Asian dishes so well. All right, let's plate everything up. The cauliflower is ready. The sauce has been cooking with the cauliflower along with our peppers. If you don't understand what I said when I meant arbol, that's A-B-A-R-B-O-L, arbol, or chilies de arbol. I found these here in Mexico at the little shop, but you can find them just about anywhere. And they add a nice little spice, especially when you're roasting them with vegetables or any ingredient you add it to. And again, you can leave it out. You don't have to add it. But if you want a little bit of spice, you can always add a half teaspoon or maybe even a quarter teaspoon to your sauce. And then you just blend that in and then pour it over your cauliflower before your second roasting. Okay, so now we have our rice and now we have our beautiful cauliflower that we're going to just plate right over the jasmine rice. The jasmine rice smells absolutely amazing. It's actually my favorite rice, and I don't really eat rice that much. So we're just gonna pour all of those juices right over it, and then we're going to garnish it with some onions and some of the peanuts that I got at the shop today, just for this beautiful Asian-inspired recipe. Now you can always use almonds or slivered almonds if you have a peanut allergy. They're interchangeable. You can even use walnuts if you want. It's your choice. I like this recipe a little sticky and sweet with a little heat, so I did go back and add a little bit more hoisin sauce on top just to kind of dress it a little bit, but you can always eat it as is. Now this recipe can be found in the entree section of my interactive Plant Forward cookbook. This recipe can be made in 30 minutes, so try it. I'll leave the information in the description box. Thanks so much for spending your day with me, and I'll see you on the next video.